In the Hudson River struck a dock in West Harlem shortly after 4 o'clock this afternoon. FDNY EMTs treated passengers after wheeling them off the boat in chairs. All the injuries minor. That accident happened at 125th Street.
Beneath the familiar currents of the Hudson River, where centuries of commerce and culture have flowed alongside its muddy banks, geologists have made a startling discovery that has sent ripples of alarm through the scientific community. What initially began as a routine geological survey aimed at better understanding the sediment layers under the riverbed has evolved into something far more urgent, prompting experts to issue a rare and serious red alert. This unprecedented action stems from the uncovering of a deeply buried fault system, previously unknown and potentially volatile, with signs of recent activity that could reshape assumptions about the region's geological stability. Before we start, smash the like and subscribe buttons for more updates. The Hudson River, stretching more than 300 miles from the Adirondack Mountains down to the Atlantic Ocean, has long been considered relatively stable in seismic terms. While not entirely devoid of tectonic movements, the region has never been associated with major fault activity of the kind commonly seen along the West Coast. Yet, hidden deep beneath its bedrock, researchers have now identified a series of ancient fault lines intersecting and converging beneath the lower Hudson Valley, some of which appear to have reawakened after millennia of dormancy. Using advanced seismic imaging techniques, researchers were able to peer miles beneath the riverbed, generating high-resolution maps of the subsurface. These techniques, akin to ultrasound but on a geological scale, revealed structural anomalies that initially puzzled the scientific teams. What they found was not just one fault, but an interlocking network of fractured rock, some of which show signs of movement as recent as the past few decades. This movement, combined with traces of heat and shifting pressure zones, suggests tectonic stresses are building beneath the surface in ways no one anticipated. Among the most alarming discoveries is a fault strand running nearly parallel to the river for over 50 miles. From north of the Tappan Zee Bridge down toward the outskirts of New York City. This fault appears to be under increasing stress, with microfractures and deformation in the surrounding rock pointing toward the possibility of a larger tectonic release. The energy buildup detected in these subsurface layers mimics the early stages of fault activity observed in other seismically active areas prior to major earthquakes. Geologists are particularly concerned about the presence of methane gas and thermal anomalies found along portions of this fault. These indicators suggest deep earth processes are occurring closer to the surface than previously thought. Methane seepage, especially when combined with shifts in bedrock, can imply the movement of superheated fluids from deep below the crust, often an early sign of tectonic reactivation. The possibility that magma might be slowly migrating upward, although not yet confirmed, has added a new layer of complexity and urgency to ongoing studies. The implications of this discovery extend beyond academic interest. Much of the Hudson River Valley is densely populated, with millions of people living, working, and commuting along its banks. Critical infrastructure, bridges, tunnels, rail lines, pipelines, crisscrosses the region, and many of these systems were not designed with active seismic zones in mind. A sudden tectonic shift, even a moderate one, could have devastating consequences. Transportation corridors could collapse, gas and water lines could rupture, and the region's aging power grid could be severely compromised. Adding to the concern is the vulnerability of Manhattan Island itself, located at the southern terminus of the fault system. Though bedrock anchors much of the city, portions of it, particularly lower Manhattan and areas reclaimed from the river, rest on sediment and fill which are prone to amplification of seismic waves. A quake originating beneath the Hudson could reverberate through these unstable areas, increasing the potential for structural damage and flooding, especially if it coincides with a high tide or storm surge. What truly startled the geologists, however, was the discovery of a linear sequence of tremor-like signatures embedded in the rock layers, extending back thousands of years. These quasi-periodic pulses suggest the fault may have a long history of quiescent intervals, interrupted by sudden violent movement. The sediment cores extracted from the riverbed show distinct layers of disturbed material, indicative of underwater landslides and sudden shifts, consistent with seismic activity. These patterns point to a cycle, one that could be nearing its next phase. To date, much of the northeastern United States has escaped the kind of catastrophic seismic events seen along the Pacific Rim. But this newfound fault system beneath the Hudson River reveals a buried potential for upheaval that had gone unnoticed. The geology of the area is far more complex than once believed. Old tectonic scars from ancient continental collisions, long thought to be geologically dead, may have been reactivated due to shifting stresses in the North American plate, possibly influenced by distant tectonic interactions or even glacial rebound forces from the last ice age. This discovery also challenges prevailing assumptions about stable intraplate regions. The Hudson Valley was never thought to be part of any major seismic hazard zone, and building codes, emergency preparedness plans, and even insurance risk models reflect that outdated assumption. Now, with mounting data pointing toward a seismically active future, those frameworks are being questioned. Officials and scientists alike are grappling with the implications, debating how to prepare for an event that has no recent precedent but now seems statistically more plausible. The magnitude of the potential threat cannot be overstated. Even a moderate earthquake centered beneath the river could generate enough ground movement to compromise skyscrapers, subway systems, and the web of tunnels that connect Manhattan to the mainland. Liquefaction, a process where saturated soil temporarily loses its strength, could undermine the foundations of entire neighborhoods built on reclaimed land. The Hudson itself could act as a conduit for seismic waves, channeling energy along its length and amplifying its effects in cities upriver and downriver alike. Compounding the issue is the difficulty in predicting such events. Fault systems like the one discovered are often slow to reveal their full nature. Unlike the highly monitored faults of California or Japan, this hidden network beneath the Hudson has remained undetected for so long, in part because of the sedimentary layers and urban sprawl above it. Its reactivation appears to be happening in subtle, slow increments, subsonic rumblings, and minor shifts that only sensitive instruments can detect. Yet, history has shown that such precursors can abruptly escalate, giving little to no warning before a major rupture. In the broader scientific context, the Hudson River discovery has reignited interest in re-evaluating other presumed stable regions of North America. Geologists are calling for a continent-wide reassessment of fault mapping, using newer satellite and subsurface imaging technologies to look deeper and more comprehensively than ever before. The possibility that other hidden faults may exist beneath major cities or infrastructure corridors is now considered not just plausible but probable. What lies beneath could drastically change how planners and engineers approach the built environment in coming decades. The scale of what has been uncovered has opened new lines of inquiry about the region's geological history. How long has this fault system been active? What forces led to its recent reawakening? Could similar structures exist in other estuarine or riverbed environments along the eastern seaboard? As scientists scramble to model the potential outcomes of a fault rupture, they are also working to refine their understanding of how deep Earth processes interact with surface features in regions previously dismissed as tectonically benign. At the center of all this is a landscape familiar to millions, a river whose surface calm belies the turmoil that may be churning miles beneath. The Hudson River has shaped the destiny of cities, states, and entire industries, and now it may be poised to reshape them again, this time through forces no one anticipated. The red alert issued by geologists is not a conclusion, but a signal, a call to action, to observation, and to preparation. It marks the beginning of an era where what lies beneath the Hudson is no longer a mystery, but a central concern for geologists, policymakers, and the people who live above this awakening fault. Scientists are now deploying additional sensor arrays, sonar mapping vessels, and autonomous underwater vehicles to continue their analysis of the fault system. Each new data stream adds to a growing body of evidence pointing toward dynamic geological processes unfolding beneath the feet of millions. Satellite-based radar systems have begun to monitor minuscule shifts in elevation along both sides of the river valley. These shifts, while tiny on the surface, could signify major realignments deep underground. The convergence of data from multiple disciplines, seismology, geochemistry, structural geology, hydrology, is building a case that the Hudson River is not merely a relic of glacial erosion, but a living, dynamic geological boundary. As such, its behavior cannot be taken for granted. While scientists remain cautious about predicting the precise timeline of any seismic event, the sheer volume and intensity of warning indicators have pushed them to raise the alarm. A red alert is not issued lightly. It represents a consensus that the risk has crossed a critical threshold. To some observers, the discovery beneath the Hudson challenges more than just geological assumptions. It confronts the notion of permanence in human infrastructure. Roads, bridges, skyscrapers, these are seen as enduring symbols of civilization. Yet the slow churn of tectonic forces beneath them reminds us that the Earth remains a restless planet. What has been built over centuries can be shaken or undone in moments, particularly when nature reasserts its hidden power. This shift in understanding also introduces a psychological component. Residents of the region, long accustomed to thinking of earthquakes as distant concerns, are now being introduced to a new reality, one in which the ground beneath them is not as immutable as it seems. Preparing for this reality requires not only physical adaptation in terms of infrastructure and emergency planning, but also a cognitive recalibration about what risks truly exist in the places we call home. As more is learned, the Hudson River fault system is likely to become one of the most closely watched geological features in the United States. Its discovery may well redefine how the scientific community assesses and communicates risk in urban environments. Already, discussions are underway about how to integrate these findings into future urban development guidelines and emergency management protocols, though uncertainty still surrounds the precise behavior of the fault. The red alert has brought the issue into sharp focus. It is now a matter of when, not if, the consequences of this buried force will be felt above ground. In this moment, as the world watches and waits, the Hudson River tells a new story, not one of trade and transit, but of ancient pressures returning to the surface. With every rumble and tremor recorded beneath its waters, with each new layer of data unearthed by scientists working day and night, a clearer picture emerges of a geological giant long overlooked. The alarm has been sounded. The earth beneath the Hudson is stirring. And now, the question facing all who dwell nearby is how to live with a fault that has only just begun to speak. While the initial discovery beneath the Hudson River has understandably captured scientific and public attention, the deeper ramifications extend well beyond the boundaries of geology. This moment has ignited a paradigm shift in how the Earth's seemingly silent terrains are interpreted, especially in regions long considered geologically dormant. The implications of such a discovery are sprawling, encompassing fields as diverse as urban planning, civil engineering, hydrology, climate science, and even geopolitics. With confirmation of a dynamic and evolving fault system under the Hudson, the first wave of attention has turned to the potential effects on water systems that intersect with the subterranean structures. Beneath the surface of the Hudson River, freshwater and saltwater interact through a complex estuarine mechanism. These natural systems rely on the stability of the underlying geological layers. A shift in the riverbed could drastically affect this equilibrium, potentially altering salinity levels upstream and disrupting ecosystems that depend on specific conditions. Marine biologists and ecologists are now working in tandem with geologists to model how seismic disturbances might alter the patterns of nutrient flow, fish migration, and sediment dispersion. The Hudson River serves as a critical spawning ground for species such as striped bass and American shad, and even minor changes in the riverbed's topography can affect their breeding cycles. A significant tectonic disturbance might not only reshape physical structures above ground, but could also unravel intricate ecological networks that have developed over thousands of years. The discovery also forces a reevaluation of infrastructure projects planned or currently underway across the Hudson corridor. For instance, several massive tunnel boring operations, including rail expansions and sewer upgrades, now face additional scrutiny. Engineers are reassessing soil composition, potential vibration amplification, and ground displacement in their designs. The new geological data suggests the subsurface is far more fragmented and dynamic than assumed, which means foundational assumptions used in structural modeling must be updated to account for sudden shear forces and lateral movement. Another emerging concern involves the interplay between the newly discovered fault system and underground aquifers. The Hudson River Valley contains several aquifers that serve as drinking water sources for surrounding communities. Seismic shifts could fracture or displace these underground reservoirs, allowing pollutants from industrial sites or saltwater intrusion to seep in. Once an aquifer is contaminated, restoration is exceptionally difficult, if not impossible. Hydrologists are already conducting pressure and permeability tests to determine how close these water reserves lie to areas of tectonic stress. In tandem with these scientific efforts, the insurance industry has been shaken into action. Regions around the Hudson have historically carried lower premiums due to their classification as low-risk seismic zones. That categorization is now obsolete. Actuarial models are being recalibrated to factor in the possibility of earthquake-related damage, even if the probability of a major event remains uncertain. Reinsurance firms are particularly concerned, as even a single significant quake could trigger massive claims across multiple policy sectors: residential, commercial, transportation, and municipal. Even real estate markets are beginning to feel the tremors. High-rise buildings in Manhattan and waterfront developments along the Hudson were not engineered with deep fault systems in mind. Structural assessments are now being quietly conducted by property owners, particularly in skyscrapers with deep foundations. There is an emerging debate over how to disclose fault-related risks to potential buyers and investors. Already, legal experts are examining whether the discovery imposes new disclosure requirements under property law, especially for developments within proximity to the fault's mapped trajectory. The effects are also beginning to ripple into the education and training of engineers, architects, and emergency responders. Universities in the Northeast are adding new coursework in urban seismic resilience and fault line geology. City planners are beginning to consult with experts typically called upon only in earthquake-prone regions like California or Japan. Simulation exercises and emergency drills are being designed with new fault-related variables in mind, preparing first responders for scenarios involving sudden ground movement, bridge collapses, or gas pipeline ruptures. On the cultural and psychological level, the impact of this discovery is more subtle but no less profound. The East Coast psyche, built around the relative predictability of the ground beneath, is being reshaped by the reality of tectonic volatility. People are beginning to reconsider their assumptions about permanence, safety, and control. This is not merely about preparing for a rare natural event. It's about accepting that geological risk is an enduring feature of the landscape. The mental adjustment required is comparable to the shift coastal communities underwent when the long-term realities of sea level rise became undeniable. Moreover, the newly discovered fault system is now becoming a focal point in global geological discourse. Scientists from Europe, Asia, and South America are collaborating to compare the Hudson discovery with similar hidden or reactivated faults in urban settings. The key question: how many more fault systems lie hidden beneath global metropolises, obscured by centuries of urban buildup and incomplete subsurface imaging? The Hudson is acting as a case study, a model through which geologists are rethinking how ancient tectonic scars can be revived under the right conditions, even after eons of silence. Climate scientists are also showing a vested interest. While earthquakes and climate change operate on different timescales and mechanisms, they may interact in unanticipated ways. Melting glaciers, for example, reduce the weight on the Earth's crust, which can activate previously dormant fault lines in a process known as isostatic rebound. Although the last glaciers retreated from the Hudson region over 10,000 years ago, the Earth is still adjusting to that massive loss of weight. This slow geological rebalancing could be subtly fueling tectonic instability, offering yet another piece in the complex puzzle of the fault system's recent awakening. The implications of this discovery even extend into cybersecurity and critical systems analysis. Many financial institutions, data centers, and digital communications hubs are located in New York City and nearby regions. These facilities are tightly integrated with power grids, under-river fiber optic lines, and satellite relay stations, all of which could be impacted by seismic disturbance. As a result, cybersecurity teams are revisiting their physical risk protocols, ensuring that backup systems are distributed beyond the potentially affected region, and that digital redundancies can survive physical infrastructure disruption. Government agencies have been thrust into the spotlight. Local and state authorities are under pressure to respond swiftly, not only with technical assessments, but also with public-facing strategies that inform without inciting panic. Communication must walk a careful line between transparency and reassurance. For the first time, New York State and surrounding jurisdictions are developing earthquake response plans specifically tailored to an urban, riverine environment. This includes early warning systems, evacuation route mapping, and engineering retrofits for critical structures. In the public consciousness, the Hudson River has always carried symbolic weight, a natural artery of history, commerce, and identity. Now it holds an even deeper significance as the surface layer over a powerful and unpredictable force. This duality is reshaping narratives about the relationship between nature and civilization. Art, literature, and media are beginning to reflect the underlying tension, using the newfound fault as a metaphor for the fragility hidden beneath the veneer of modern life. Energy production is yet another area seeing ripple effects. The Hudson River corridor hosts several power facilities, including natural gas plants and electrical substations. Many of these installations are situated on the river's banks or atop buried infrastructure that may now be at risk. Regulators and energy companies are reassessing their risk exposure and considering modifications to make critical systems more resistant to vibration and fault slippage. Some are evaluating whether to reroute underground cables and pipelines away from the newly identified risk zones. If you liked this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, leave your comments below and tell us, what are your thoughts on the red alert under the Hudson River? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.